Salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ahlan wa sahlan. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Brilliant. Okay, so let me share screen and let me begin the lesson. Okay, Bismillah. All right, share screen. All right, let's begin, insha'Allah ta'ala. So I imagine this lesson will be split over 2 sessions because there is a bit of content that we need to get through. And so just be patient and we'll do it nice and slow and nice and easy for you, insha'Allah ta'ala. So let me get my pen ready. So we're going to move on to the next part, which is another particle, which you should be aware of. And these are all important particles in many, many ways. And the particle we're going to be looking at is the particle fa. Okay, so let me get my pen. Let's see if we can get different style. Alpha, okay, written like this, alpha, the particle fa. Okay, so the whole lesson today's and next week's, inshallah ta'ala, we'll be looking at this particle. So this is the second particle, and of course, we're looking at conjunctions. I explain what conjunctions are. They conjunct, they bring together sentences or part of sentences together. Okay. Right. And the most important thing you need to remember when you read the books of usul on this, so detailed books on usul, is there's a conversation is that when the fa appears in a sentence, whatever comes after it, do you have to do it straight away? Or can you wait and do it perhaps later on? This is a conversation that they have. And it seems to be, at least in our understanding, that the fa literally means sequence, okay, and immediate. You have to do it straight away. It's not like you have a delay in it. Okay. So whatever the clause that comes after the fa, right? There shouldn't be a delay in it. There shouldn't be a gap in it. That's what it's saying. Okay. So whatever comes before the fa, so says here, and whatever comes after it, and we'll do some examples, you have to do it immediately together. Okay. And there's a posh word for it in English, which I'm going to share with you. It's not in usul al-Shashi, of course, but I'm going to share with you, insha'Allah ta'ala, for today's lesson. Okay. If I can find it, that is. Where did I write it down? I actually made a note on it. Here we go. So, this conversation, of course, is part of grammar, but it's also part of rhetoric. And the word we have for before, so I'm going to do it here, is what's called the prostasis. I need to spell it well, otherwise it's going to be embarrassing. Prostasis. And the prostasis basically is made of two words, pro and statis. It basically means standing before. Standing before, that's what it means. And it's part of a conditional sentence. It means the first part of a conditional sentence. So, for example, if I say, it's raining today. Okay, so if it rains, that's the prostasis. Okay, if it rains, prostasis. If it rains, we will stay inside. Okay, and so the second part is called the apodosis. So this part here is the apodosis. I'm just showing you this because you might find it interesting. I do anyway. This happens in the Qur'an quite a lot, and in the Hadith, of course. Okay, so the first part is like a conditional sentence. If it rains, if something happens, then we would do this. Does that make sense? So that's what prostasis is. And then you usually have, in between the letter or the conjunction. And then you have, of course, the apodosis, which I just labeled for you below. Apodosis basically means, in Greek, giving back. Giving back, or you could say answering. Okay. It's the second part of the conditional sentence. So if it rains, that's this part. The apodosis is we will stay inside. If something happens, this will happen. Yeah. So this is like the condition, if you like. This is like the condition. If it rains. Yeah. And this is the consequence. Very easy. If something happens, if I speak, you must listen. Something. Okay. And we use this in traditional grammar. Right. Just to give you, a kind of simple if clause. And a fa is kind of understood as if here, but we'll see that it doesn't necessarily follow that. All right, so let me just separate that up for you, because that's just one part of the learning today. Okay. And we've also said that our fuqaha say that it is immediate. So if it rains, it doesn't mean you have a choice. You shouldn't wait around. You have to stay inside if you were to follow. So there's two parts. There's a grammar side to it, and there's the implications of it. Okay. In Arabic, we call the apodosis clause the jaza. So we call this the jaza. Okay. It's expressing a consequence. It's a conditional sentence. Okay. So that's just the basic introduction or a mapping of all of this. And of course, the pro stasis is the should. Okay. So I've given you the Arabic, the Latin, the Greek, whatever, and the English. You're getting everything, alhamdulillah. Showing this because we do this in everyday language, but it's good for you to be aware of it. So let me give you an example. Example 1. So somebody says to his wife, here's his wife, if you enter the house, here's the door. If you enter the house, then you are divorced. So if you then divorce. So what will happen here? The moment she enters the divorce, it will happen immediately. There's no delay. Yeah. If here, you can see the conjunction. If you do this, the consequence will be divorce. That's one example. I'll give you another example. If someone says that now this is slightly longer, so I'll do it here, inshallah, it's no problem. If someone says, I sell this slave or this item, so I sell this slave on your behalf for 1,000. So here's one person. Okay, person A. Here's person B. Here is the item or the slave, for example. So he says person A says to person B. Person A says to person B, that I sell this slave on your behalf for 1,000 pounds. Okay. So he says that to him. I sell this person on your behalf for 1,000 pounds. And B says, then, as in he is free. That's what he says. So A says this to B. A says to B that I'm going to sell, or I sell this slave on your behalf for 1,000. And the person who hears this, he says, then he is free. What are the consequences? So let's look at this reply here. Okay. Because what's happened really is there's been a condition from A. If, or I sell this slave on your behalf for 1,000, and the second person has then said the consequence. Okay, so what we call the prostasis and apodosis, or the shart and the jaza. Now the reply here, what has he done? There's an implicit, right, thing going on here. There's an implicit or hidden acceptance. There's an implicit or hidden acceptance of the sale of the slave and upon the completion of the sale. So he's implicitly, by replying to him, saying that then he is free, he has implicitly accepted, implicitly accepted, or how did I hear already? Acceptance of what? Maybe I've written the object. Acceptance of the sale. Yeah. He remember, he didn't say to him clearly, what did he say? I sell this slave on your behalf for 1,000. So there's a sale that's been accepted here implicitly by him saying, then he is free. So he's implicitly, he hasn't said I've accepted the sale, but he's just basically said then he is free, right? So what's happened here? There's a hidden or implicit acceptance of the sale, right? And once that happens, what happens afterwards? Because the slave is free. It doesn't happen straight away, but once the contract is done, the slave is free. It's as though he said, in effect, what he said is, I've accepted the sale of the slave for 1,000, so 1,000 pounds on my behalf, and because once you buy something, what happens? What's happened here? What's the implication? Is ownership. Can you see? Ownership has happened. You've owned the person now. I set him free. Because you can't free someone, you can't free the slave until you own him. You can't sell something on until you've actually bought the item. So let's just take an everyday example. If A was to say to B that I'm going to sell, let's just use my bicycle. I'm going to sell my bicycle to you. I sell this bicycle to you. I sell this bike on your behalf for 1,000. And the person says, then his bike is free to sell or something like this. Right. So as soon as he's basically said, I'm going to give it to charity or something. I'm going to give it away or something. So, to do that, he has to first own the bicycle, which implies that he's accepted the sale. When he says, then he is free. Can you see? Because there's something implied before it in his statement. I hope that makes sense. Right? It's kind of like logic. It's like thinking through. You can't free someone. You can't sell something on until you have fundamentally an ownership of it. Why is this? Is what I've explained. Like you can't grant the freedom of a slave until you actually own it. You can't sell something on until you actually own it. So there's an implicit, concealed acceptance of the sale. This is what I'm saying here. All right. Because it doesn't make sense. Why would person B say he is free if he doesn't own the item? Like what right does he have to say that? So for him to have that right to say that, he has to own it first, right? It's just a consequence of it all. So in order for his sentence, person B, when he says then he's free, there has to be this understanding he's accepted it. Does that make sense to everyone? Yeah. So take a quick breather, and I will give you another example. And the way these examples work is they're useful because they show you the asl, the foundational idea, and then what we do is we build on those ideas. Music again. So let's use a contrastive example. So contrast, a different example. Contrastive example number 3. We'll see how much we can cover today, inshallah ta'ala. What if the person said, so let's just use example above, same scenario, but the particle fa wasn't used. So this fa wasn't used. No particle. Yeah, used. Now remember, the fa we said when it's used here so far, it means it's immediate. Okay? And if you use another one, so let me just show you, because we'll come across this later on. If you use the letter wow, which we'll cover, it does not mean this. In other words, it doesn't mean sequence and immediate. Wow doesn't mean that. We'll cover it inshallah, but I'm not going to mention it now because this will be useful. So if we said, for example, I sell this slave on your behalf, same as before, for 1,000. So 1,000 again, and he is free. So what did he say? And well, he is free. What are the implications of that? Okay. Or he just says, without the wow, he is free. So I sell this slave on your behalf for 1,000, and he just simply says he is free. The fa is really important here because it brings in this meaning. Without it or something else, it doesn't have the same meaning. Okay. So if he says, I sell this slave on your behalf for 1,000 and he is free, or he is free, he just says, I sell this slave for on your behalf for 1,000, he is free. This leaves ambiguity. Like we're not sure what he means. It's not clear. But here, the example above, example number 2, is quite clear what he means. Because the wording with wow or without the wow, whichever one you, it leaves 2 possibilities. Possibility 1, possibility 2. Because person B is saying to him, when he says he's free, right? He's informing person A, the one who made the proposal, that the slave you're selling is a free man. He's just saying he's just a free man. He's basically saying he's a free man. Like he's saying to him basically, think about it, this scenario. I sell this slave on your behalf for 1,000, and what does he say? He's a free man. Yeah. He's just basically telling he's a free man. So in other words, he's saying that he's refusing to sell. Like, how could you sell this person? Can you see? Does he really mean that? Refuse to sell. He's a free man. Why are you selling me someone for? Basically. Or he could be accepting the person. So above, basically, accept, and sell. Could be that. And this obviously, if we take the example above, this one, this scenario. Now, what you have two completely unresolvable dilemmas. Right? This one and this one, they are you can't even bring them together. There's no way, because they lead to different consequences. And you see, you've got a problem. And you can see what this is going to happen. This is going to lead to problems, social chaos. And we, as jurists or thinkers, fuqaha, don't like this. There's doubt. Ambiguity leads to different outcomes. That leads to doubt. A transaction with doubt in it causes issues. We don't consider it valid. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Insha'Allah ta'ala. And let's just keep it one page because there's, oh, yeah, salah. Okay. Let's just keep it one page nice and tidy if we can. So, just for clarity, this is example number 1, example number 2. Then we looked at a contrastive example number 3. Now I want to give you another one. I'll give you an example. Example number 4. Okay. So let's go to this example. Say, for example, so we're sticking with the particle file. So here's me as a customer, and I love nice clothes, alhamdulillah. So that's me as a customer. And I go to my tailor, say in Turkey or somewhere. Tailor. I hope he's not watching this. But say I go to my tailor, and I ask him, I've got some cloth. I've got a cloth. So say I've got a piece of cloth. Say this is a piece of cloth that I've just bought from, where have I been? Uzbekistan. So on the way back, I stopped over in Istanbul from Uzbekistan, and I have a piece of cloth. And I say to him, is this sufficient? Is this sufficient for my garment? Okay, so I ask him a question. This is what I ask him. And he says to me, it'll be sufficient. Is it okay for this? And then the customer says to him, then, so he says it's sufficient, then, as with a fa, cut it. So what am I basically saying? If it's sufficient, prostasis, if it's sufficient, this is, you always have to look at what's actually being said, right? So the grammatical structure, the shart, dot prostasis, is it sufficient? If it's sufficient, right? What's this? It's the apodosis, the jaza. Yeah. And say, so that's what's happened. That's the kind of structure of what's being said. Now what happens is the tailor goes ahead, he cuts the cloth, but it turns out that there's not enough cloth there. So who's responsible? Is it my fault or is it his fault? Who's responsible for this? Okay. Now, who do you think is responsible? Who do you think is responsible? Anyone? No, I don't think we've got many people. Oh, we have got reading notes. Okay. I don't know what reading notes are, but yeah. Okay, so if you think about it, the person that's responsible here is going to be the tailor for the mistake. Because the instruction was then cut it, and it contains the particle fa, which implies that the instruction to cut it was immediate, as we was established, and based upon the tailor saying it was sufficient. Basically, what's happening here is if it's sufficient, then cut it, right? That's what he said. Otherwise, don't cut it. Now, the cloth was insufficient, and the tailor cutting the cloth he's not done it according to the customer's instruction. He's not followed this kind of instruction. And the tailor acted upon his own accord and not upon the customer's instruction. The tailor is responsible. Makes sense? Of course, if there was no the wow was used, or there was no particle, like if the cloth is sufficient, cut it, uncut it. That would be different, because there's no immediate connection or explicit ordering, and then in that case they would be seen different, and ambiguity would be there as well. Then it would be the customer's responsibility, because he's saying he's basically saying, is this sufficient for my garment? The tailor says, and the tailor says sufficient, and then I would say cut it. That would be different. Okay. Or uncut it. That would be understood different. That would be understood as separate. All right. So I'll let you digest that. Let me give you another example, because I love my examples. So let me get my ruler. Let me give you another example. Going around clockwise, as you can see. I'm going to try and fit it all on one page. Another example is example number 5. I'll try and keep this one short. Example number 5. If somebody said to one person, so A says to B, okay, A says to B, I have sold this cloth on your behalf for 10, so then cut it, cut it, without any dialogue. And the person here, B, who's been instructed, goes ahead and cuts it. So that's my rudimentary example of a scissors, right? He goes ahead and cuts it, and cuts the cloth. That's a completion transaction. Because the meaning of the seller's words, if you expand this, if you accept the sale on this cloth for 10, then cut this. Because he's accepted it. Because when you cut it, cutting is followed, there's an implied idea before it, acceptance. Can you see? There's acceptance before it. Cutting is showing that it's accepted. Simple example. I told you I keep that one simple. Do try to deliver on what I say. Not always perfect as a human being, but try my best. Let me give you another example before we summarize what we covered today, inshallah. Give you one more example. These examples are so useful because you get to tease out what's actually going on. So here's example number 6 for you, my friends. Say, for example, we have a wife. Okay, you noted that. And somebody says to her, if you enter this house, then, I'm trying to make them identical, but not very good. And then this one. If you enter this house, house A, and then house B, there and there. If you enter this house, then with a fa, right? Then you are divorced. So if you enter this house, then this house, you are divorced. So the prostasis, the condition, the shart is if you enter this house. What is the outcome? Divorce. This house and this house. So for example, say if what happened was she needs to enter the first house, and then immediately, without delay, she needs to go to that house, right? Then the outcome would be divorce. If she was to do that, that's the apodosis, the jaza. But for example, say she went in there and then she went to Tesco's. I don't know if it's on a boycott list, but anyway, she went to Tesco's. Not to buy anything, if it's on a boycott list, she just went there to have a look, right? And then she went to the house. No divorce. Why? Because of what we said immediately. Yeah, this is really, really important for you to bear in mind. I wanted to start a related discussion, but it's going to be a lot longer. So I have to justify the choice that I'm making. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop here and then continue with this in next lesson, because now we've done the framework, we've understood this. We're going to take a break. Next lesson, we're going to explore something that comes out of this, a sub-discussion out of this, if that makes sense. Does anyone have any questions they would like to ask? Anyone would like to ask a question? Okay, I will take your silence as you're happy with this, and that we will meet what wills, inshallah, next week. Okay. Subhanallah, bihamdihi, subhanakallah, wa bihamdika, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum.